Everybody, and a very warm welcome to this social business coffee break, which today is exploring the topic of how to navigate leadership change. My name is Tim West. I'm the founding editor of Pioneers Post, the magazine for pioneering entrepreneurs, investors, innovators, and policymakers working to create sustainable solutions for the world's most pressing social and environmental challenges. As you might know, Pioneers Post is not only a magazine, but we're also a social enterprise ourselves with a mission to support our community of impact pioneers build a better world through good business. And we do this not only through our journalism and stories, but also with an ongoing programme of webinars, awards, training, and networking opportunities. The social business coffee breaks are about both learning and connecting the pioneers in our community. They aim to give you a shot of social business inspiration to energise your morning and also to provide some practical tips to address the challenges that you face as you attempt to sustain and grow a thriving social business. These coffee break sessions are also delivered in partnership with NatWest Social and Community Capital, which is NatWest Bank's independent social investment charity. It's part of the Learning and Networking programme developed for the SE 100 and WISE 100 awards community. This is the first of 4 webinars on the theme of building bold and resilient social organisations. We're living in an increasingly volatile world, and it's never been more important to build organisational resilience and create systems and teams that not only can adapt to challenges, but thrive in them. So the series will address different aspects of this theme, drawing on the insights of experienced leaders in our networks and hopefully equipping our community with some practical tools and tips and providing an open space for questions. Now, leadership transitions can be pivotal moments in an organisation's journey, and with the help of 2 leaders, Zoe Whyatt from Homes for Good and Victoria Papworth from NatWest Social and Community Capital, we're going to explore the experience and process of taking over leadership, what that's like for the leaders themselves and for their teams and organisations. What are the approaches they took, the challenges they've overcome, and lessons they've learned and would like to share. So we'll get into this topic in just a moment, but as always, since these are coffee break discussions, we always begin by asking our guests to introduce themselves briefly first by telling us what they are drinking this morning. So first of all, Zoe Whyatt, CEO at Homes for Good, good morning and welcome. And what are you drinking this morning?
Good morning. I have got well, I have actually just finished it, but it was a cup of tea. I hope that doesn't break the rules as this is a coffee break. And it's in a nice mug that I got from a recent exhibition I went to see at the Tim Burton. It was at the Design Museum, and it was a Tim Burton exhibition that was excellent.
Brilliant. Design Museum in the centre of Glasgow, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it was a
No?
design museum in London.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you, Zoe. So next, Vicky, CEO from NatWest Social and Community Capital. What's your chosen brew today?
Well, do you know, it feels a bit muggy down here in London, so I've not gone for anything hot. And although I would normally be quaffing some coffee from Upward Mobility, who have a really fantastic roastery up in Scotland, but today I'm kefir with a little bit of creatine added to keep me sharp.
Very good. Okay. Well, today I'm going to show it to you here. So this is Momentum Espresso from the Modern Standard Coffee Company, based in Scotland. It happens to be one of the few female-founded and run coffee businesses in the UK and has a roastery in Fife, a cafe in Edinburgh, and another cafe in West London. Modern Standard makes a point of sourcing coffee directly from the producers, paying a fair price, and it also has a focus on promoting diversity. It's LGBT plus owned, and 40% of management roles are filled by LGBT plus people. They also recycle their coffee packaging, provide compostable cups and compostable lids, offset their gas consumption, and donate the coffee chaff, which is produced when you roast the coffee, to the Ecology Centre, which is an environmental charity in Fife, who mix it into their compost to enrich their soil. So we've taken our first sips of climate-friendly coffee, or other drinks are allowed to, and it's now time to tackle the topic of conversation, how to navigate leadership change. There'll be time for Q&A at the end, but please do use the chat and the Q&A function to make comments and ask questions along the way, and I'll try to bring some of those into the conversation. However, for the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to have a conversation with our 2 guests. Zoe Whyatt has been CEO at the Scottish social enterprise lettings agency Homes for Good since October 2024. taking the reins from the founder, Susan Actamel, who remains a director and part of the team. Before joining, Zoe was a consultant supporting purpose-led organisations with strategy and transformation. And among other leadership roles, she's also been interim CEO of the not-for-profit campaigns organisation 38 Degrees and acting CEO of Second Bite, a food relief charity in Australia. Vicky Papworth is coming up for 2 years, I think, in charge at NatWest Social and Community Capital. She was previously director of the Coutts Institute, and she was also director of programs and development for UK community foundations and on the business development team at Locality, which is the UK membership organisation for community organisations. So that's a bit of a sort of bio, but to start with, please tell us, both of you, about your roles and your leadership journeys. I've reeled off some stuff from your biographies, but in your own words, what do you do now and how did you get there? Zoe first.
Yes, so as you said, Tim, I started as CEO at Homes for Good in October, so not quite at the year point yet. And when I was thinking about my leadership journey and how I've really arrived here, it actually really started with an email I sent 20 years ago. And that email I sent when I was working at an organisation in my hometown. I was a project manager and I was desperate to leave and travel and work somewhere else. So I sent an email to all the country heads of all the English-speaking offices of this company I was working for and just said, have you got any jobs? I don't think I asked any kind of permission for that, and that probably tells you, maybe that tells you something. But and the woman who ran the New Zealand operation of that company emailed back and said, yeah, I've got someone in it, basically your role, that's going on mat leave soon. Would you like to just come and cover it? So I shifted to New Zealand for a very sort of exciting year. That's what I wanted to do. And from there, I met a company that's based in Melbourne. It was a really exciting tech startup, and I got a job there. And it was them that really took a punt on me, I suppose, and that really started a leadership journey for me, because they asked me to go and open operations up in the US. And I was quite young, I was in my 20s, and I thought, yeah, that'll be all right. Like, why not? I mean, you know, you need a bit of that audacity of youth, don't you, to actually just say yes to that sort of thing, I think. So I moved over there and I lived in the US for 3 years, setting up the US operation of a tech startup company there. So I learned how to build a business from scratch. Even though we had the support of the HQ, I learned how to build a business, build a team, make decisions, good ones, bad ones, fix them, you know, and that was a real sort of difficult and challenging, but really interesting and fascinating job. You mentioned I moved back, so you mentioned Second Bite, a food rescue organisation. I moved back to Australia and got a job in not-for-profit, and that was just a personal values-led decision. I wanted to work in the not-for-profit sector, and I got a job at Second Bite, which is a charity that rescues and redistributes food. And soon after I joined, the CEO went on maternity leave and didn't really return. So I was there as acting CEO because it was a team of about 10 when I was there. So I took on that role, and there I really learned to scale. So we were in 2 states when I joined, and we were national by the time I left 3 years later. I came back to the UK. I joined Impetus, and I started to work, I think because of that experience about scaling, that was the key to getting a job at Impetus, where I worked with the CEOs and boards of charities that were looking to scale as an investment director. For those that don't know, that's sort of a venture philanthropy organization. And then I, excuse me, then I left there. I sort of obviously wanted a bit more of sort of the startup world. So I joined another tech startup and set up a European office for them, using some of the skills and some of the learnings that I'd had from before. And there again, I think I really consolidated some learning around how to build and how to scale. I joined 38 Degrees after doing some consulting for a while as interim CEO for 3 months. And due to various circumstances and a variety of reasons, COVID included, I stayed for 2 years. And there I really helped the organization consolidate at the 10-year point and do a really robust and comprehensive strategic project with the SLT, new board members, and opening it up to other stakeholders around the sector. So yeah, that I think why have I landed at Homes for Good? I think because that experience, and I hope we're all hoping that that experience is something that the Homes for Good need right now. And that combination, obviously, Susan, the founder, and the board thought that, that's what we need. And I thought, I can probably add some value here. So there's the nutshell journey of how I've landed here.
Very interesting. So lots of opportunities that you've taken to arrive at organisations at critical points of change or critical points of development, I guess, which seem somehow to have excited you and given you specific. It's a bit like Liam Neeson, isn't it? Sort of, those very special skills. Okay, so Vicky, how about your journey? You've again had lots of experience in across different sectors.
Yeah, I think, I guess like everyone on this call, my journey has really been rooted in my values and my purpose, and particularly in place. A lot of the roles that I've had have really been focused on building those connections between funders who kind of often sit in quite a rarefied atmosphere and those fantastic organisations on the ground that really are delivering real change, and making a real difference to the communities that they serve. And that, when I reflect back, I think that intersection of kind of strategy and purpose, and strategy and some of the hands-on operational matters, feels like it's a real driver for me. And I love that balance. I love that variety. And so I think as you're moving through your own personal journey, of work, let alone of leadership, like understanding what you know and what you do well and what you like is really, really important. And for me, unlocking funding for underserved communities feels like it was really important then when I started 20 odd years ago, and it still feels really important, even more important now. And I've been so lucky, and I intentionally have done a lot of very, very different roles. And I think that feels really important for learning and for growth. And I've been the person who's been developing the team, who's been that person who holds the space for conversations about change. I've been the person who brings the funding in. I've been the person who grows the income streams and develops the opportunity for the organisation to grow. And I've been the person who is building those strategic partnerships and those networks. And every role I've had, it's probably had a little bit of each of those, but the different roles I've had have really majored on very specific different things. And I found that really energizing and really interesting. If I think about a couple of the roles that I've had, so when I worked at Locality, and for a few years when I was there, I ran their consultancy. And the really interesting thing about the Locality consultancy was that it used chief execs and chief financial officers from local charities and community associations across the UK to deliver consultancy, both for other community associations, so business planning for community asset transfers and so on, but also to feed into local and national government to evaluate lots of the big kind of place-based strategies that they were delivering or closing. And that felt like such an incredibly rich learning environment. So there I was in a relatively new role, getting stuck into working with 100 CEOs over the next 2 years. And I really took the opportunity when I was there to reflect on the behaviours that I saw, to really understand those model behaviours that I thought were really interesting and really powerful, and to kind of test them out in spaces that when I was working with those organisations and with those people. So it was a really rich environment, I think, to learn and to test out ways of being, which was really helpful. Another role that I had after I left Locality, when I went to work for UKCF, which is another fantastic organisation, again, like a network, a membership organisation for really enterprising organisations across the country. And when I joined UKCF, there were 4 members of staff, and when I left, I think there were 16. And I'm really proud of being really pivotal in bringing funding in and being able to grow that organisation. I often find in my roles I'm that person who wants to consider how we can grow and evolve and do things differently. And so that was a really, really interesting role for me. And I think also as a trustee, so lots of my roles, I always have a bit of volunteer work on at the same time, and really recognising, so at the moment I'm a trustee for a fantastic charity called Furnishing Futures, which builds out and furnishes homes for families fleeing domestic violence. And it just really shows, I think, that side of desk leadership, that additive space for your for all of the learning that you do and all the experience you have, whether it's formal or paid or intentional or accidental. All of that has shaped who I am and where it's led me. And so I think wherever you are and whatever you're doing, the focus on your operational roles is really key. But sometimes it's the other roles that you have and the other tasks that you take on which can really help you grow.
Okay, so both of you, I guess, you've both been on journeys that gave you lots of different qualities for leadership, to learn about leadership and to deliver leadership. But as a senior leader, when do you actually make that decision that you want to step up as a first-time CEO, and how do you know you're ready for that and want to do that? I mean, because obviously being the boss is quite different from being a senior leader. And Zoe, also you were parachuted in, I suppose, to various roles where you found yourself the boss. But in terms of making an intentional decision to step up as a first-time CEO, Vicky, when and how did you decide you wanted to do that?
Yeah, I think I'd got to the point where I'd been having quite a few conversations with my peers and with my friends about whether I was ready. And a lot of my peers were talking about stepping stone jobs. That might not be the one job that you wanted, but it gave you the skills and the expertise that you needed to then move into another role. And that wasn't something that I wanted to do. And I didn't feel comfortable looking around for something like that. And I think a growing sense of my cumulative experience and the point when I felt ready, but also, when the right organization came along, when I felt needed, and marrying my values, marrying the skills which I thought I could bring to an organization which was at the right time to take on someone with those skills and experience, that felt like, I don't know, I don't want to say a lucky accident, because it was intentional. And I very clearly looked for an organization that I thought would be a good fit for me and that I would be a good fit for. But nonetheless, timing can feel really key, can't it? So there's something about how you grasp that opportunity when it comes along, I think. And some of us, I guess, are accidental CEOs. Some feel a bit more intentional, and it's all part of that journey that we go on. And for me, part of my driver has always been, like as I mentioned earlier, that opportunity to grow an organization, to scale it, to think about how do you evolve the organizational capacity to deliver and make change. And that thrills me. I find it really exciting. And so finding an organization that was ready for that and that needed me to do that felt like it was just the really right fit. And I think as a first-time CEO, what I really recognized, and like a shout out to my team for this, who've really helped me with this, is to recognize the history and the legacy of the organization that you're joining. So SNCC has been around for 25 years. There's a really rich history there of fantastic activity, and reflecting on that and respecting that as you bring in perhaps some changes or adaptations to the way that you're delivering or delivering differently. That felt like was really important as well.
Okay. Thank you. And Zoe, as I said, you've almost been an accidental CEO in several organizations, but and it looks from your bio on your LinkedIn page that you you were moving away from that into consultancy, but then Homes for Good was very much a deliberate decision. So what made you take on that role? And you've said a little bit about that already, but what specifically did you want to try and achieve?
I think consulting, if you've got the ability to do some consulting, sometimes that's a bit of a space that you can create to think about what you want to do in your next role. And I have to admit that I wasn't sure at the start, but I really missed being in a team. I really missed leading a team and being in a team. So that became clear. And these things, you have to do things for them to become clear. So I felt that I had started to get my antennas up again around perhaps joining an organization. But I didn't, I didn't have an intention to do that when I started doing some consulting with Homes for Good. But what really sort of helped me make the decision was someone gave me some advice a few years ago that was think about what you want to learn in your next job. And I think because I'd got to know the organization, I had some real clarity on what I could learn from Homes for Good, which is great. Housing is a new sector for me. Property management's interesting. Lettings is interesting. Being a social business that really wants to aim to get fully traded is really, really interesting to me. I think that's something I really want to focus on probably for many years to come. And there was some complexity that I hadn't dealt with before around group structures and finances. So there's a whole load of stuff for me to learn. And as I'd got to know Susan and the team, I could see that some of my experience was going to be useful and helpful.
Yeah.
So that sort of combination made me think, okay, maybe this is the role. You know, so I think thinking about what you're going to learn, whether you fit and your skills fit for what the organization needs right now, because that does change over time. And I think there was another reason for me, which was I actually wanted to move out of London. It's a personal reason, and this job's in Glasgow, and here I am, you know, and that's been brilliant, and I've really enjoyed that move. And so there's always a mix of things going on, isn't there?
Sure. Okay, so we've looked a bit at kind of personal career stuff, motivations, and the motivations and the journey of leadership. Let's look at some more sort of practical stuff now. So when a new CEO is appointed, sometimes it can be from within an organization, sometimes it's from outside. Zoe, you were external, but you had the opportunity to work with the Homes for Good team as a consultant for a while before you came on board as CEO. So in a sense, you went in very much with your eyes open, but you were still coming in as the boss, which was a new relationship dynamic. Vicky, you were at Coutts before, so you were part of the broader NatWest family because Coutts is part of the NatWest group, but obviously you were still someone coming in from the outside with knowledge of banking and also the third sector, but I don't think you'd worked with the team previously. So to both of you, what were the main challenges and opportunities that you found yourselves with as the new boss? And just a very basic question, what was your approach? What did you do on day one? Maybe Vicky first.
That's a great question. I think, you know, it felt to me really important, as you say, not knowing the team and it being quite a small team, to really just start with listening and getting to know people. You know, what were people's motivations? What are their aspirations for their career and for the organisation that they work for? And a real desire to move quite slowly and not break things to start with. And our team is fully dispersed. It was before COVID and it is now. So we're almost always on Zoom together. So wanting to find some time to bring us together physically felt really important too. But you know, I had these two really magic moments quite early on in the first few weeks of joining S&CC. And one of them was the On Purpose Matching Day. I don't know if people know the On Purpose programme. It's really fantastic. Really recommends that you get to know it. It's a great opportunity to bring in resource to your organisation if you need it, with some really intelligent, sort of, you know, energetic people. But as a host, so I host On Purpose Associates, you have this whole day where you spend like an entire day listening over Zoom to 25 plus people pitching themselves as a potential associate for your organisation, and you pitch yourself as a potential host. And so not only did it help me to build my reflections on S&CC and hone my sense of what we did and why we did it and where I wanted to take it, it was such a fantastic way to get to know one other member of my team who runs the programme and the relationship, and to really see them really selling the organisation and to see their reflective practice as they considered like what that chemistry match might be with the potential collaborators. So it was a really rich way to understand very quickly a lot of the deeply personal drivers behind what we do. And that's the kind of the operational part. And then the strategic part, as I mentioned, I really like to mix the two, was that pretty soon on, I think it was in week 2, I had a board meeting. So I didn't really know any of the trustees. I'd met a few of them at interview, of course, early stage conversations. But it was really interesting to help them to get to know me. And although I wouldn't necessarily have the answers to some of the questions that they were talking about, I could set the tone and the tempo for the way that I wanted board meetings to run. And that was really useful, I think, really helpful. Like on reflection, I probably would have been a bit firmer in that first meeting. I, you know, kind of come from quite a reflective, collaborative space, but and perhaps it took a little bit of time for me to really set that tone and tempo. But having that happen so early on was really, really interesting, and I think a really valuable experience.
Yeah. And Zoe, how about you? I mean, you'd been in the team before, but then you suddenly arrive as the new boss. So what did day one look like for you?
Yeah, so I obviously knew everyone, which is really great, and obviously part of the decision to be there. And I think
Yeah,
that gave me that sort of head start on trust because I'd chosen to join. So there
yeah,
was a sense of, okay, this is good. She's enjoying working here, and she's coming in, and she's gonna, she's gonna help us in these ways. And then
yeah.
you have to think, yeah, I am gonna help. Right? Which ways am I gonna help? So I think a real day one, Susan and I had obviously talked in the lead up to it around how we were going to work together and how we were going to share responsibilities. And so we had a team, I mean, it wasn't exactly day one, but it was kind of around then. So we had a team day already in the diary, and we took the opportunity at that team day to really try and talk around. We'd sort of created a Venn diagram of, literally what I'll be focused on, what Susan be focused on, and what's in the middle that we're
Right.
co-focused on, to try and explain. But we were very honest, I think, and to say, this is what we're going to try and do. Let's, this is the theory, and we're going to have to give it a go. But at least we're trying to be really transparent about what we're trying to do, because I think the thing I think it's really important to remember is, as a leader, you're thinking about strategy, you're thinking about lots of different moving parts at all times. But a person in a team isn't thinking about that broad stretch of things. They're thinking about their job and what they're doing, and they want to do a good job. I trust everyone is at work to do their best. And so you do have to keep coming back to that sort of what's in it for me kind of
Sure.
communication, just really good comms around, we're going to be trying to do this. What does that mean for everyone here tomorrow? Maybe it means nothing tomorrow.
Yeah.
But maybe you're going to see this happen next week, or maybe you're going to see this happen next month, and you could expect this next quarter, that kind, but we'll keep checking in. So I think that sort of the comms for us was the key. Yeah, they knew me already, and I'd already been around.
Sure. I mean, sorry, so Karen.
Sorry, I was just remembering that when I started the role at 38 Degrees, my actual first day, my actual day one in that job, was a feedback and challenge training session with the new interns. Absolutely brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. It was a great training session, and it was with some of the team as well that had been new starters in the last 6 months or something. So it was like a third of the team, all the new interns, and me at feedback and challenge.
Right.
That's an organization that chucks you in the deep end, but it was great.
Yeah, I mean, both of you have reflected. Your team obviously they might know you a bit, but they might be nervous about you. They'll be keen to know not only what you're like, but how you operate. And you've both talked a little bit about, not necessarily reassurance, but certainly about the importance of providing clarity about what you're going to do. But also, I guess, about your leadership style and how you operate. And I guess there's I know both of you, I think, have got some interesting thoughts around how your team can understand you and how you operate and how to manage you well. Vicky, I know you have thought about that quite a lot.
Yeah, I'm slightly distracted because I've just seen a little comment come up from Hugh Rollo, who I used to work with back at Locality. It's so lovely.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna have to catch up with him afterwards. All of your team isn't just the people you work with now, is it? It's all of these fantastic people that you've met in your life and whose approaches you've kind of sucked into yourself.
Yeah.
And I think when you're modeling that behavior to your team, to a new team, as you're bringing them on board with the change that you want to make, it is really important to keep yourself honest, turn up willingly and openly with optimism for the work that you want to do. But I think people are inevitably and very naturally keen to understand what changes you want to make and how that affects them and what that will mean for their work. And exactly, Zoe, as you said, it's really important to respect that. And while sometimes your head can be in the clouds with making changes, growing income streams, adapting the strategy, it's just worth really reflecting on how that plays out in very human terms, in day-to-day, very human terms for your team. I've always felt it's quite helpful to help your team understand how you communicate. So I am quite a reflective thinker, but I'm very, I want to build a co-creative space where we can discuss issues from strategy down to delivery, whilst providing that clarity around how decisions will be made. And I talk about that a lot with my peers, and I found it really interesting and really useful perspective from my peers around how you give that clarity you know, at what point you need to be really, really clear about decisions, and when it's time to open up and listen and to pause and to change your own thinking. And I think in a small charity context, and I've often worked with quite small charities, and I love that. I feel like that's where you really make change happen at pace, which I enjoy. The relationships are often deeply personal, and you really forget that, you know, at your peril. I think, you know, whenever your head is in the clouds about strategy, that's a real challenge. But, you know, there's something I've been reflecting on recently, which is that like these leadership narratives about being open, about emotionally available, about building networks and relationships, these are always driven, it seems to me, through a really neurotypical lens, and I think that is challenging and difficult for other people who process information in a different way. And I think there's a real space right now for how we craft, not just how we craft messages of different ways of leading, so I think that is happening right now, but how do we challenge ourselves to really build on those and to build them into our team?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because they're not only different leadership styles, but there's a diversity of leaders, and the way that they operate will be very different. And sometimes, you know, you need to think about that and work out the best way for leaders and their teams to communicate with each other. Yeah. Zoe, what are your reflections on that?
My reflections on that are I think it's really important when you first start with a team to deal with some hot potatoes. I just think it's really important to show that you can sort of be effective for them, you know, that so if there's a hot potato that's going around, you know, and something's difficult or things are stuck, I think that, and that is me coming like with a bit of a sort of operational get stuck in, like let's help the team move something, but it's actually about showing effectiveness and building trust and getting right in there and building those relationships and learning about the team and how people work, because you're going to need that when you want to do things that are bigger projects, strategic, you know, bigger things. People will need to understand that, well, this is going to happen, this is happening, this is an effective leader that can make things happen. But it also, dealing with some hot potatoes, you know, helps everyone's day-to-day job, which should help their job and make their job easier. So if you can show that you can do that, and that's a bit about why you're there, then that's good.
So what's an example of a hot potato?
Oh, a hot potato, right. We're an ethical lettings agency, key management. When I walked in, first couple of weeks, right, what are the things that drive everyone crazy? What are the things that just seem to never get quite, the process never quite gets right, the system doesn't quite work, it's really hard, and it shouldn't be this hard. And maybe, I suppose, a hot potato might be because no one's really taken accountability to actually sort it. So I think there's always those in every team, in every organization. And I think to show that you're willing to deal with some, you know, tackle, that's just a small example, but it's that stuff that affects people's day to day, you know. So showing a willingness to really tackle the difficult stuff, get things unstuck. And I have a mantra that I keep going on about, which is fix it forever. And I know that's not sort of really reality, but the sentiment is, don't just tweak it, don't just fix just now and do it in a rush or whatever. Think about why that hasn't worked, why is that's not working, and try and fix the system. And if you get everyone trying to fix the system all the time, you accelerate improvement and change. But I would also say the other really important thing is to help people understand how you make decisions as a leader. And that pays dividends if you can try and over communicate that and really try and show that in a very open and transparent way all the time in your first few months, because then when other things are happening in the organization, people's assumptions will be more likely to be correct about you.
Okay.
So you want people to, if they don't understand why you've done something, you want people to say, but I trust that Zoe, Vicky, whoever, I trust that their motivation is this, their intention is this, and maybe it's gone a bit skewy this time, or maybe it's affected me in a way they don't realize, but I trust the whole picture here is positive and trying for positive change. And you know what? I'll let them know what's gone wrong, because that's the environment we're working in. That's where you want to sort of get to.
Okay.
I love that. I love that fix it forever as a kind of trust building exercise.
It slows people down a bit in a fast pace. We both, clearly, Vicky, we both like a fast pace, get things done, make change. But, you know, that idea of getting a team to take a moment, take a moment. How do we fix this? Yeah, how do we fix the bigger bit?
Yeah, and I think, like, for me, when I joined SNCC, I very consciously said to myself, you know, you need to slow down, you need to really pause here, Vicky, and unlearn the behaviour which every other role has taught you, which is get in there, sort it out, throw a load of ideas down and make it happen. But this role isn't about that. This role is about pausing and listening and understanding before you understand what needs to change. And sometimes you're right, Zoe, I think creating and holding that space for the team to slow down too is even harder than doing it for yourself, but even more important.
Yeah, I guess, you know, there's a lot of talk in leadership circles, isn't there, about making sure that you can spend time on the business, not just in the business. And that means being able to sort of take yourself away from things and be more strategic, as well as, you know, not being the person who fixes everything. But as you say, people need to trust that you know how to fix stuff. But just taking it back to the sort of moment of leadership change, which is what we're talking about, or the period of leadership change, how much time should you spend learning, listening, and taking stock? You know, is it a matter of days, weeks, months, and when is the right time to formulate your own new strategy? I mean, some people, I know some of you, you know, sometimes you can arrive and the board's already got a strategy there and they say, hey, deliver this. But all leaders, I guess, will want to take some time, but then work out, well, what are we going to do to take things forward? So what's the process that you've both taken to do that? Maybe Zoe first.
I think you're sort of already in it. I think you're sort of in it straight away. Strategy is happening.
Yeah.
Right, at all times. Something is happening at all times that is taking the organization in a certain direction. So I think that acknowledging that and therefore try and understand that is really important first. And maybe that is what we're saying when we, you know, what does taking stock mean, right? What are we taking stock of? I think it's really important if you're going to make change that people come with you. And for people come with you, it's about all the things we've already talked about, but also really understanding what are the norms here and absolutely respect the past, you know, value the past, because the reality is most businesses fail. So the fact that the organization is here means that a lot of what happened in the past was good. So that's good. And I think that language you're using, Tim, around evolve, I actually have to catch myself on the fix language sometimes, because it works for something, but it's not how you should sort of frame the bigger picture. I think you know, evolve is better. And so learning about how things work, how are decisions made, what are the norms, building a picture of and a vision of where you sort of think the organization needs and wants to go. But I have to say, over the last few years, I've moved. I think it's flexible around whether you need a stop-start strategy process or whether you need to do it in a different way and just be in it and guide it for a period of time. You might just sort of do strategy from what I might think from the inside, even though we're all on the inside. So there's a time and a place for a stop-start strategy program. And I've definitely done those, and they've been, you know, and that's been really the right thing. But there's also a time for the sort of more agile way of being aware and moving with the flow and trying to sort of dig out the channel as you're moving with it. And I think a bit that's what we're doing a bit at Homes for Good, because I think Susan and I working together is, you know, co-leading with the founder is sort of a really interesting challenge right now, and that's what we're working on in a way.
Yes. Yeah. Vicky, how about you? You there was a new strategy in place, I think, when you arrived, wasn't there?
There was, and when I was having those first conversations with the board, almost like pre-interview conversations, and they said, you know, we've spent a lot of time over the last year. The board has designed and sort of drafted this strategy. This is the strategy. It's a place focus. And I said, oh, well, you'll find no greater champion than I for the power of place-based funding. But also, if I don't agree, if I get this role and if I sit there and I understand the organisation, if I don't agree that it's the right strategy, what power and agency do I have to change that? Or is the board locked in for the next 5 years?
Yeah.
And of course, they were all sort of very respectful and said, no, Vicky, you know, of course you'll be, you know, a key part to this and we'll decide whether the strategy is right or not. But as, like, I think Zoe's absolutely right. Like, you've got to be in it and guide it to throw out a whole new strategy, which had had a lot of work and time and emotional intent put behind it, would not have been the right thing to do, let alone whether, and that's taking out to one side whether I thought it was the right approach or not. I do think it was the right approach, and we've worked really hard as a team to bed that in and build it out. But I do think that before you even think about the strategy, whether you're changing it or building it or growing it or evolving it, you do need to really respect and understand the culture of the organisation, the legacy that organisation is bringing. And for me, when I joined S&CC, far more importantly than the fact that the board had drafted a strategy, which I might or might not agree with, was that I joined at the back end of 23. 2024 was our anniversary year. We're 25 years old. And so that was a really fantastic opportunity for me to really understand the values behind the organisation and to reflect on on what had been achieved and where we were really strong, and also to reflect on another of my team members who's been with the team for 10 years, has been with the wider bank for a lot longer, and is not only this incredible bank of corporate knowledge, but is the most passionate champion for the values of S&CC.
Sure.
And so being on that journey with her as she was celebrating 25 years was a really powerful experience, and it sort of supercharged my understanding of why we were here, I think, and how I could build that into any changes to the strategy.
Yeah, that's really important. It actually, a lot of what you've both been saying is reflected. We've got some interesting questions in the Q&A, and we've got one question from Ria Patel, who I think is your On Purpose associate, and she said, when you've taken over leadership positions, what balance do you strike in taking time to understand the organization and then listening versus bringing about change and your perspectives? So I think you've probably answered that already, both of you, but I just wanted to highlight.
Is there something, Tim, here about the board as well? Because I think for me, managing board expectations was really key. So yes, I came in with a mandate for change, but I had to pace that in a way that worked for my small team and in a way that the team could absorb. And so it's both working with the team that you have, but acknowledging your other partners and stakeholders, and internal and external.
I mean, certainly, one of my next questions actually was at board level, either as a chair or board member, what are the key aspects of your role in this situation? So how do you as a CEO manage the board? But if you put yourselves in the shoes of, there'll be lots of board members on the webinar at the moment. If you're a board member or a chair, what's your role in the leadership transition phase?
I'm going to jump in because I've got really strong feelings about this, actually, and I have such a fantastic board right now, and we're actually just going through a process of recruitment for new trustees, and I'm both really sad that I'm going to lose these two fantastic trustees who've personally been enormously supportive to me, but also really excited to think about how the tone of the board will shift and change. And so I would say I very intentionally built my relationships with board members, sort of formally and informally, and helped them to understand what I needed and what they needed, what I needed from them. So it's not just about strategy for the board, is it? As with any time, not just in a time of leadership transition, it's about the support and guidance which you can offer. And really championing externally and internally the new leadership that's happening. I think, honestly, I think I was, because I wanted to be a problem solver, I was perhaps less honest with the board about the challenge that I was facing personally. And I think there was a kind of my emotional temperature, which I tried to manage myself. And it became, it became much easier to manage when I was really honest with the board about the pressures on me and the pressures on my time. Okay.
And Zoe, how did you deal with your board? I mean, you have a founder as well, and we'll get onto the founder bit in a minute. But from the board perspective, what?
I mean, the board. I think it is around understanding. You obviously need to get to know the board members, and as a consultant, that's something I hadn't really done. So that was an interesting. Okay, that's that was a new opening to really get to know the board members, and I think everyone on the board had actually a really good sense of maybe how difficult the transition might be, and therefore really sort of put their hand up to me and said, what do you need, and has been supportive. I think like leadership, board leadership, you also have to be flexible, and you have to be offering what's needed at the time to some extent. Obviously, you've got your actual responsibilities around governance and etc. But to understand that a founder in Homes for Good in particular has decided to bring on a first CEO, you've got to be alert to that. That's going to be challenging, and so just to provide support and a supportive space. We're actually just about to launch a recruitment drive for new board members, and in particular a chair for Homes for Good Scotland, which is the sort of the middle piece that runs the letting agency. And it is partly Susan and I really understanding, we need something, we need some more members actually, and we need something more. So that's been a really strong joint decision that I'm really happy with, and I'm really excited. I think we both are, about who might come through the door.
And how have you both gone about? We've got a question related to this from Sarah Philbrick in the Q&A. But how have you gone about forming relationships with your chair and your board? What does that look like? I mean, how obviously not just at board meetings. Presumably you've had individual meetings with them as well.
I mean, I can just kick off with.
No, yeah.
So yeah, I think having one-to-one time to personally get to know each other is important. And that's for me as CEO to understand, okay, what are the skills that this person on the board has been bringing, and actually at Homes for Good, a lot of the board members have been there for a long time and really have gone through the journey of growth and the journey of the first sort of 10, 11, 12 years of Homes for Good. There's strong values, there's strong belief, there's real ambition for the organization to keep being successful and grow. So that's not in doubt, but it is interesting for me to have figured out, you're really good at this, right? I'm going to call you about this thing. You're really good at this. I'm going to call you about this. So you sort of start to learn that and put things in, just ask. I'm quite sort of open around, where people would like to have input. More input's great. So there's more brains on something, that's brilliant, but they're also a board member and their time is limited. So I just think having an easy enough and open relationship and asking where people would like to have input through different things. So yeah, I think you have to build their relationships really, and for me that was starting from scratch. So that's been just the last few months.
Vicky, how did you go about speaking to the board, getting to know them?
So I think very similarly, as Zoe said, like building some one-to-one time outside of board meetings. For board members who are here on the call, I think, so some of you will come together perhaps quarterly for board meetings. Some of you might have more formal committee structures that you join, and those are probably offset against board meetings. So you might be meeting formally with the CEO, every sort of 6 or 8 weeks, which is a really nice rhythm actually. So making yourself individually available for some of those more formal governance structures, but also as a sounding board, more generally, I think is really helpful. I mentioned, I think, for me, the board members being a real champion externally for this place of transition and change feels really important. So they're holding space with your partners as you're kind of getting to know them and building out those bridges. And then thinking as well, think about previous roles where there's a really committed and long-standing senior leadership team in place that you also need to build relationships with separately outside from the wider team, separately from the board, and understanding the space that they hold and the behaviour that they're modelling and how they can act as a bridge, I guess, between you as the newest member of staff and the rest of the team. And I think for everyone to recognise, sometimes we don't speak a lot about the personal journeys that the CEOs are on, recognising that you're coming in as a really new member of a team into a really committed and values-driven, often long-standing existing team, whether that's trustees, whether that's other team members. So helping people to hold that space for you, I think, as a new member of staff while you get to know people is important.
Okay, thank you. There's some really interesting questions coming up in the Q&A about founders, and that's we talked about that in our preparation as well. I'm going to start actually with quite a practical question. So Solvega has asked a really practical question. Do you have any advice on how best to announce a leadership change internally and externally, particularly when a founder is exiting. So what happened with both of you? How do you announce things, and what works best? I mean, this is all about communication, obviously, which you've already said is really important. But who'd like to take that first?
I can. I
Yeah.
don't. That's fine. So using the example of what happened last October at Homes for Good. So we had a very intentional sort of soft launch, actually. And I guess it's because I was known and I'd come in through consulting. So once Susan and I had agreed and everything was in place, we talked to the team first in person at a team day. And as I mentioned before, we tried to talk through what our intentions were around roles and responsibilities. Really important to tell your own team and talk about what's going to happen. We then spent the next week with mostly Susan, to be fair, of course, bringing around key people. So she would have already have talked about this idea a bit and who I was with key investors.
Yeah.
And so they got this is happening, this is going to, and this is the timeline. So it went from so internal through investors, etc. And then I actually was in the role. My contract started 1st of October. I was in the role. We didn't announce it to the publicly till a month later, because we wanted to do all of that and get everyone informed, ask the questions you want to ask. You're really important to us. You're investing in the company, or your key stakeholder, your key partner.
All your stakeholders, basically.
Yeah. Every stakeholder contacted in some way, because some need phone calls and some need email, and then we announced it in November. And so no one's surprised. Everyone's been contacted. Everyone's had a chance to share thoughts and reflections. And then the support sort of came through, and it felt good. It felt smooth, and it didn't feel like just a one-off, announcement. It was very much a plan.
Yeah. Because as you say, everyone's going to be thinking, oh, what does that mean for me? What does that mean for my organization, I guess?
I think, just to add it, particularly with the founder, so Susan absolutely is, the founder of Homes Good has built that the organization and is the face of it. So you also need to manage any nervousness from, for example, investors on a founder's exit, because even if they might be able to see there are other skills that are needed in that organization, they also might have a cautiousness about, well, is Susan going or staying? So for us to give clarity and no rumor mill around it, just here's the clarity right from us. And then the announcement's going to come in a couple of weeks. You'll see it come out on LinkedIn. I think it just meant that everyone was fully informed and calm, and it went well. Yeah.
Vicky, have you got some reflections to add to that?
I think we probably did something pretty similar, actually. I had talked with the previous CEO, like even before I applied. I sort of checked in with them. I knew them. And so I checked in with them to say, look, give me a bit of what's all the, the deal behind this? What's happening with your role? But being conscious as well, sort of once I was in post, and it's not, as you said, though, it's not a one and done, is it? Everyone's attention is spread across a number of different platforms and styles. And so finding ways to drop in, as with any communication, finding ways to drop in pebbles across a period of time is like a good way to help people be on that journey with you. And I'm conscious as well that being the first employee of the charity that hasn't spent a lifelong career in banking, who's come from the charity sector, who understands the sector, who has that wide network. I mean, I'm absolutely not saying that people before me didn't, but I come from a different place, having worked deeply in the charity sector. So I bring those networks with me. So we sort of very intentionally hosted a rather lovely dinner with a few kind of key partners within month one, which was a really nice way to have a slightly informal and deeper conversation about where we thought the organisation was going, what support we needed, and how we would draw on them over the coming months.
Okay. There are a lot of questions in the Q&A about the founder side of things. And so, Zoe, you've had the added dynamic, as you've already said, that the founder of the organisation, Susan Axmel, appointed you. She's still very much active in the organisation. I'm interested in what it's been like to take over from the founder, particularly when the founder is still part of the business. But there is quite a few. I'm going to just share some of the questions at the same time. So Caroline DL, who runs a Social Founders Network, has said she'd love to hear about what strategies you used specifically to take over from a long-term founder. And then Kath Wakeman is a founder CEO, who she says is about to step down from the role within 6 months. And she would like advice on how she can best set the ground for a new CEO. Um, and also, what are the pitfalls of staying around in an organization, you know, on the board or in a different role when you step down as the founder CEO. So I think all of that, I think, is stuff that you have direct experience of with your situation with Susan. So how what sort of advice would you give to Caroline's network and to Kath about the steps that you've taken?
Yeah, I would say to start off with, every situation will be different.
Yeah.
And you got to keep that in mind. It's a different person, different dynamics, different people.
Yeah.
In terms of taking over, I think keep the frame of transition. Keep a frame of transition, because everyone is there to try and keep that organization healthy and growing and sustainable and long into the future. So if you're the incoming new CEO, what's your actual, so a CEO job can be a lot of different things at a lot of different times in different organizations, size, what do you think your job is? And you might give it a 3-year horizon to start with, because that, you might stay however long, but and if you discuss that, then I think that's probably just a healthy kind of conversation to have.
Yeah.
I think, and Susan and I have done that. We've got a real sense of a transition. We're very much co-leading at the moment. And and to be honest, I probably wouldn't have joined if that wasn't true, because I'm not from housing and property management. And this is a successful and large social enterprise. And so I think that actually is part of it, the fact that we're co-leading together. So what's the right transition structure, and how can you make that work? What could you both be responsible for over the coming, over a particular period of time, and hand things off? Don't take out, but handing things off as you go.
Yeah.
If you are doing a hard stop, maybe the best setting the ground for the new CEO coming in 6 months. Can you backtrack that? So have you recruited, I don't know the time scale, so that's going to be important, but is there the opportunity to make an actual transition plan? Pitfalls of staying, that will be very dependent on people and motivations, right? I think that's true. And so if you are coming in, you're going to have to make a personal judgment about whether you think it's going to work. So I've made that judgment for me, and Susan's very much there. And even once we transition more, she'll still be on the board.
Yeah. So
you have to make a decision about who you can work with, and if you think your skills are complementary and that you're going to trust each other to bring those complementary skills.
Yeah.
One tip I will give, I'm sorry, I'm conscious of time, I see it, but one tip I will give that is practical is that in the transition, we started talking about everything. You could talk about everything all the time when you're leading an organization. So we have a quick fire weekly 2 hours, and that's just operational decisions, quick fire. We have a monthly planning half day, which is planning, but not the big.
Yeah.
And then we have quarterly strategy, whole day out of the office, sit down and really think. And those are really important. We found that's really important to break that down. That's just a tip on maybe how to work through a transition phase.
Yeah. Okay. Vicky, just quickly from you, I mean, you will have seen lots of founders in your networks handing over successfully or unsuccessfully, maybe, to people. What are your observations of that?
I would say very briefly that transition and change is often framed as quite disruptive, but that it can be a very deep act of care for an organization.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to end, because we need to end the conversation now, really, but I just want to end by asking you each to share just some final thoughts. I think I've covered most of the question, most of the Q&A, which is great. So, but some final thoughts and one piece of advice from each of you, one key lesson that you have learned that you'd like to share about navigating leadership change. So maybe Vicky, if we start with you, and then we'll go to Zoe.
I would say it's never forget to recognize the personal journey that you're on. You won't have all of the answers to begin with. It's not just about the strategies, it's about your own growth and your own resilience as much as that of the organization.
Yeah.
And that the lesson that I continually learn and relearn is that your networks are more important now than they had ever been before. And your peers and your friends will help you build that space of reflection and encouragement and perspective that really values how you think.
Okay, and Zoe, same question to you. What's the one key thing you'd like to share?
I think I actually said it a little bit before, so I'm cheating slightly, but I think these jobs are busy and difficult and challenging and can be intense, and there's always too much to do. So the thing I've really learned and I'm really trying to apply here is what's my job right here, right now in this organization, because identifying that will keep you right and probably keep you sane.
Great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks very much to our two speakers, Zoe and Vicky, for being prepared to share your leadership experiences with us and how you've navigated them. Thanks, as always, to our partners, NatWest Social and Community Capital, for making these webinars possible. We'll be scheduling more social business coffee breaks after the summer break, so look out for announcements and notifications. We'll also be publishing the video of this one and a story with it on the Pioneers Post website and through our social media and newsletter channels soon. So very many thanks to everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your questions. Very, very insightful and interesting questions, which I hope we managed to get through. Have a lovely rest of your day and rest of your week, and goodbye. Thank you.